"3DB and music have always been close companions. Some of our earliest shows were accompanied by a lone piano. But as the station grew, so also did its ambitions. Producer Elf Potter.
The most progressive thing, and something that was years and years before its time, was the fact that 3DB employed an orchestra full-time, a staff orchestra of about 36 people.
Burden Williams, music supervisor for the ABC in Melbourne, resigned that post to conduct the serious works of the 3DB orchestra. With the founding of this orchestra, 3DB made radio history. In February 1949, it became the only radio station in the world, with the exception of the giant NBC network in America, to engage a permanent symphony orchestra of full-time musicians. The lighter side of music was handled by conductor William O. Flynn, who became the more sedately named William Flynn. The orchestra made records released on 3DB's own commercial record label, but none was more successful than the one recalled now by producer and program director Norm Spencer.
Of course, an orchestra was a hard thing to do, keep going. And of course, I think the only thing we ever made money on was King George VI happened to die at the time, and no one had a version of God Save the Queen. So I got the orchestra together and the Windsor Singers, and we recorded God Save the Queen and sold it all around Australia.
Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, sometimes before their time.
But in those days, we outproduced ourselves. We outproduced the market. We sold to South Africa, Canada, America, New Zealand, all around Australia. Sold a few shows to England. But we couldn't sustain the expense. We tried to put on live shows, but dare I say it, there were so many restrictions imposed on us by the Musicians' Union, which was just starting to grow then, and they wanted all sorts of dressing allowances and public performance allowances because we wanted to put on a 2-hour lunchtime show to take up some of the calls, because we were committed to 10 calls a week, and we wanted to put the show on of lunchtime free, but it was going to cost us too much money, so finally we had to get rid of the orchestra. Fortunately,
other shows lasted much longer.
And then, of course, Swallows Juniors, which I started at DB with Ernie Sidney, Gaynor Bunning, and somebody who you know very well, little Paddy McGrath. It was beautiful.
Wake the dawn and tell the people, sing it to the moon above. Wake the dawn and tell the people, tell them I'm in love with you.
Of course, young Paddy McGrath went on to much success in the television version of Swallows Juniors, and then progressed to Channel 9's Tarak show and the wonderful Graham Kennedy era of television. She also married very well.
Tell them I'm in love with you.
It's quite the done thing these days for big stars to perform at outside venues. But this wasn't the case back in the 40s when 3DB began a historic radio program.
Music for the People started off in the Botanic Gardens, not at the present side of the music bowl. It was over the back near a lake, and the Crawfords, who we haven't mentioned, had a great influence on drama and music in radio, of course. And we used to drive the van over there with a couple of microphones and or a dozen microphones of a Sunday morning and and set up, and just used to do it, and it became so popular as a program that just about everybody in Melbourne listened to it.
Surely the great success of 3DB in its early years was its wonderful understanding of variety. On a Sunday afternoon, thousands of people gathered in the gardens to see and hear this. Hector Crawford conducting the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Meanwhile, just a mile away, sitting in the 3DB studio, preparing to play the records for the duty announcer, was a young Footscray boy who was going to make some musical history of his own. How did Ernie Sigley get to 3DB? John Eden has the answer.
Ernie Sigley, I got to the station, actually, because he was a choir boy the day that my wife and I were married at Christchurch in South Yarra. And the story can now be told because it's common knowledge I adore my wife, and we've been married for 36 years. And we'd gone through the immediate preliminaries, and we're going back to sign the pieces of paper and all that sort of stuff. And this little voice out of the choir said, "Sucker." And I didn't know who it was, and I wasn't going to inquire at the time. But some months later, a young bloke comes to DB, "Do you see, looking for a job?" And I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Sigley." I said, "What's your experience?" He said, "Well, sir," he said, "Sir, fancy Sigley calling anybody sir." And he said, "I used to sing in the choir at South Yarra." I said, "Were you a little that said sucker?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Well, you're bloody well wrong." I said, "But I like your cheek, you can have a job." And he started, and then, of course, he was operator for Danny, and I inherited him at breakfast time.
What a gift from Danny. How often does an announcer have as his panel operator someone who makes a gold record when he's only 16 years old?
Your love and mine, dear, it will shine, dear, just like the golden ring on your finger. Love isn't just for tonight, or two arms that hold me so tight. Love is a song that two must learn to sing. Love is a golden ring. Love.
Ernie Sigley. Someone who was very important to Ernie's career, indeed to the career of almost everyone who ever sang or tried to sing on 3DB, was the pianist extraordinaire Mabel Nelson. As any singer will tell you, back in the golden era of radio, you could have the best producer in the world, the finest song in the world, but when you walked up to that old carbon microphone, if the pianist wasn't with you, you were history. And the history of 3DB shows that Mabel Nelson was with her artists all the way. Here she is with Bill Collins in a rare singing appearance, joining the Accurate One for their own special version of I Remember It Well from Gigi.
Do you recall that fateful day?
When we first joined DBLK.
Ah, yes, I remember it well.
There was such fun for all to share.
And Jeff McComas had curly hair.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. Flora Mack was 17.
Darrell Bruin, 22.
Curtis Crawford made his first speech.
He said, "Goo goo."
Ag Brown dressed herself in a herald one night and went to a newspaper ball.
Her costume caught fire and burnt her entire front page sporting section and all.
She had a burn above her knee.
And where her want ads used to be.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. She gave a groan and several tucks.
And blamed it on Jeff Palmer's butts.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. She ripped her herald off and didn't give a blink.
Donned the sporting globe, said I'm in the pink.
It didn't fit to be specific.
But her track gallops were terrific.
I hope
You'll remember
From Mabel Nelson to a full concert orchestra and chorus. That's how the music went round and came out here at DB. An early production was syndicated throughout Australia and broke new ground in overseas markets.
With a song in my heart, the story of men and their music, of composers who really had a song in their heart.
A pretty girl is like a melody that haunts you night and day. She'll start upon a marathon and run around your brain. You can't escape. She's in your memory by morning, night, and noon. She will leave you and then come back again. A pretty girl is just like a pretty tune.
Musical production at 3DB led the way for other stations to follow. And many artists, singers and musicians owe their start and all their success to the radio station in Flinders Street that thought big.